and welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. I'm your host, Michaels, and on the show today we're going to be touching on the MRP outcomes again. I know it's a bit of a repetitive topic, but it's just a gift that keeps on giving. And we have another opposition supporter guest today as well, after the success we had last week with Frankston Rover. But first of all, we'll introduce the Richmond guest, CraZdotcom. Welcome to you, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And from the Geelong board, welcome to you, Riessy.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me too.
No dramas at all. And as we do for all the first-time guests on the show, we'll just find out a bit about how you started supporting the team. So, Kraz, I'll start with you. How did you become a Richmond supporter?
So basically my father, who come over from the UK for work, and he settled in New South Wales and started going to the rugby league and was following the Balmain Tigers. A few years there, and then he made the trip down to Melbourne for work, and he just obviously stuck with the Tigers theme and started going to a few Richmond games. So basically from there, he was basically just a Tigers supporter from landing in Australia. And my first game, I would have been about 4 or 5, and it was Richmond versus Hawthorn, and it was Dunstall's 17 goals. And I was, like I said, 4 or 5 and out by halftime. It must have been a great game for the Tigers. And like I said, it was Dunstall putting on a show and kicking 17 on Scotty Turner. So not many good days as a Tigers fan since then, but stuck tough with the Tigers, and hopefully some success is not too far away.
Yeah, we're looking okay so far without wanting to jinx ourselves. And Riessy, how did you become a Geelong supporter?
I was like one of your early guests. I actually was a Collingwood supporter when I was really, really little. I was like 2, and my sister said to me, "You can't go for Collingwood anymore because I go for Collingwood and Mum goes for Collingwood and Dad goes for Geelong. So you need to be a boy and go for Geelong." And that was pretty much how I became a Geelong fan.
Wow.
I got told to.
As simple as that. And we'll go with a bit of a different topic. Riessy, do you have a favourite Richmond memory?
I've got 2. One I'll make short and sweet. I'll just mention the year. It was 2007.
We can edit this out, you know.
I won't go into that anymore because I'm on a Richmond podcast. But I don't remember the year of this or the exact details, so it will be pretty hard for anyone to guess what it was. All I remember is Richmond kicking 10 or 11 goals in either the third or fourth quarter to come from behind and completely roll Hawthorn. Kraz and his dad took me to the footy, and his dad absolutely was losing it. And I vividly still remember him grabbing Kraz and shaking him, screaming in his face, "We've kicked 8 effing goals," and then just like shaking his child, and we were both just like, "Oh my God." So that, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the Tigers because of like you blokes, but especially that moment.
So you more because your mate was getting hurt as opposed to the 8 goals that we kicked in the quarter. That's good.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a combination.
All right, we'll move on to the Autopsy Play of the Year award. So the votes that come in after the round 20 game against Hawthorn were Josh Caddy with 5 votes, Dion Prestia with 4 votes, Dustin Martin with 3 votes, Kane Lambert with 2 votes, and Dylan Grimes with 1 vote. So that makes the leaderboard. In 5th place, Jack Rewald on 15 votes. Equal 4th on 17 votes is Toby Nankervis and Kane Lambert. In 3rd place is Alex Rance on 38 votes. 2nd place, Trent Cotchin on 40 votes. And in 1st place still is Dusty Martin on 66 votes. Kraz, what do you reckon those votes are pretty accurate, with Caddy with the 5 and Dion Presti with the 4?
Yeah, definitely Caddy's best game for us, I guess, statistically. I think, like, obviously Caddy's been a bit hard done by, and some of his performances haven't been that great. But when you look at it, he's really helped Dusty, Cotchin, players like that in the midfield. just taking that extra body off the big names there. He has been great for us, and statistically it was his best game. But I thought his first month with us was great as well. I think that gets forgotten. As for Prestia, it was again his best game for us as a Tiger. It was just his decision making in tight contests that I was very impressed with. And I think that's exactly why he was brought into the team and paid, I guess, a big price for him with, I think it was pick 6. But yeah, no, I think he's starting to show some good form and getting some fitness coming into the finals, I guess. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how he goes for the next few weeks.
Yeah, and both of those guys are pretty hard done by on our board. Even during the game thread, Josh Caddy was copying an absolute pasting, and even if we take away the 3 goals that he kicked, because yes, granted they were out the back, he still had to work hard to get there. But take those away,
that's right.
His work rate around the ground was exceptional, and the fact he was pretty much playing as a key forward and crashing packs and bringing the ball to ground, I thought he was awesome, and he was very, very hard done by some posters.
I will say about Josh Caddy, he was one of my many guys that are mid-tier guys that I love and hope will take the step to elite, but he still hasn't done it, but that if he is going to do it, it's now, because that's usually his one good game for the year if he keeps his Geelong form. But hopefully he decides after this weekend to keep performing well.
I saw a statistic today that Skilled Stadium, there's only one player that's been successful and had tasted victory at Skilled Stadium, and it's Josh Caddy. Not anyone on our list has won at Skilled Stadium. So hopefully he knows how to manoeuvre the ground and continues that form.
It's just a ground.
Well, we'll push on to the roast and toast. Riessy, you've got the roast this week. What have you got for us?
I'm going to have to roast Tom Papley. I'm not going to call him all sorts of names, but I love the guy. I love the way he plays his footy. I reckon he's as hard as a cat's head. And it's 2 weeks in a row that he reckons he's just been absolutely hammered it perfectly, and it's dropped him. And yeah, he's a player that you'd love to have in your side, but he's just got to stop dropping so easily. I mean, if he copped an elbow in the face while he was running to the ball, it wouldn't knock him over. And on a side note, I reckon Jimmy Bartell needs to start helping us out a bit more on the MRP, but that's another thing.
He's still very, very upset that you made him retire.
He needs to get over it.
And Kraz, you've got the toast.
He did help you a few weeks ago with Joel against West Coast. Mm.
Yeah.
The only thing
but Stan Mitchell had that coming.
The only thing that could be is Bartell must have a poster of Richard up on his wall or something like that. He's just trying to help the Tigers out.
Could be.
And Kraz, you had the toast this week. What have you got?
Yeah, look, my toast is I'm going to obviously stick with the Tigers with all my kind of conversation pieces, but I think that the defence for me has been the reason why we are, where we are at the moment. And you look at the stats, and we've got the best, I guess, against points. We're winning the competition and the lowest kicked against us. And it's a credit to the coaching staff, to the defensive coaches, Alex Rance. I mean, he's our MVP. You can talk about Dusty all you want, but you take Rance out of that defence. And I feel like we get lost a bit, but I think it's more so you've got your Aspreys, your Grimes, Brandon Ellis has gone to another level, and I feel like it's because of Alex Rance. You can tell they will do anything for him, even after a goal's kicked against us. You watch them huddle together, and they just listen to him, and he just marshals that defence. And it's to me, it's the reason why we are third at the moment. So that's my toast for this week.
I think that's spot on with his leadership as well. I think there was a point in the game on the weekend where Luke Bruce kicked a goal that he must, I think he got a cheapie, an uncontested mark, and as soon as that happened, Rance just lost his shit and got all the guys together and just laid it out there, and they regrouped and got back onto it. But you're right, they just respect the hell out of him, and he's been exceptional.
Yeah, they do. He's the guy, I call him the general.
Yeah.
And it's like players, brought in in the middle of the year, like Nathan Broad, who, was probably at the time only given a week or two, but he's played so well, and it's because of leaders like, Rance and Cochin that have helped him, and he busts his ass everywhere. I mean, yesterday you saw him gut running 100 metres, back every time. Same with Brandon Ellis and players like McIntosh. Yeah, they might not be the most skillful of players, but they're busting their ass for the team, and that's all you want really as a supporter base. It's all you want in players is to bust their ass and give their all, and they are this year. So that's where we are at the moment in third. That's the reason why we are, because of the defence.
If I can say anything about Rance, people always will compare him to Scarlett because it's the closest to being and they're in the same generation just about. But I always watch Rance, and at first I didn't really understand the comparison, but I look at it now, I started to this year realise that Rance does things on the footy field physically that I don't think Scarlett would be able to, and he's now starting to lead all the others around him.
What would that be? What's the difference?
When I watched the Sydney game live with you guys, the amount of times it looked like he could not possibly make the contest, and he was always making every single contest, and he was nearly dropping down to his knees. He was so spent, but he was just there, and it was like he was the back six, and I was like, I don't think Scarlett could have been the back six the way it was like without Rance. It looked like you guys were toothless, and now he's just leading everyone around him as well and bringing them up to his level. Like, there's not a person, I don't even know if Richmond fans would have thought that David Asprey would be talked about the way that people are starting to talk about him. But you got to put that down. Obviously, there's Lepich is back, but Rance is leading those players. And, I reckon he'll if he keeps this up for the next 4 or 5 years, he'll go down as one of the greatest fullbacks ever, centre-half backs, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, definitely.
And it's interesting.
And to think that Asprey too, that's not a season, or maybe 2 seasons ago, we were willing to chop him out to Brisbane for a second-round pick, I think it was. And, in hindsight, that would have been terrible thing. But, look, he's easily our most improved. And for him to take the number 1 defender each week and be so confident in it, and again, as Riessy said, it's to do with Rance, really.
Yeah, well, everyone who plays in that back line can play with confidence, knowing that Rance will be there to spoil, or he'll be there to make a contest. They don't have to worry about too much coverage. But just on Asprey, I think there was an article written or an interview with him just recently, and he was extremely close to going to Brisbane. So apparently he did like a pros and cons list between the 2 clubs. And he was obviously just wanting game time, but because of injury and things like that, he was struggling to break into our side, and he couldn't go past not playing for a big football club like Richmond. So thankfully he hung around, because I think he'll finish in the top 5 in the BNF this year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
All right, we'll push on to the review of the Richmond-Hawthorn game firstly. So Richmond 13-15-93 defeated Hawthorn 9-10-64. So we won by 29 points, which has now put us into 3rd spot on the ladder. It was a massive game, and I must admit, I was pretty nervous before the game, just because Hawthorn were pretty much one of the most informed teams in the comp, and we are notorious at dropping games like that actually means something in terms of our season. So it was extremely comforting to see that they played so well. But at the same time, I couldn't help but sit there and look at the scoreboard and think, if Hawthorn happen to kick 2 or 3 quick goals, they're back in it. It's just a bad habit I suppose a lot of us have gotten into, but I felt like we had control of that game from start to finish after rewatching bits and pieces. What were your thoughts on it, Kraz?
Yeah, definitely agree. I felt pretty confident going into it. I just feel like the last month we've turned a bit of a corner mentally, and I knew yesterday going into it, if we could get the win, no matter how big or small the margin, it would do us wonders mentally. But yeah, look, from the get go, we were on, and our pressure was amazing. Like I said to a few of my mates today, that I've never seen a Hawthorn squad or a Hawthorn team pressured with the ball, and their decision making wasn't really up to par with their past few years. And I put that down to our pressure and us being switched on right from the start, and it showed.
Yeah, it was. I think I put it in the preview thread that I put on BigFooty that the high octane pressure was what we needed to do, especially without Jack Riewoldt running around up front. Yes. And yeah, the boys definitely brought it in spades. And like we spoke about earlier, the back line was pretty immense. Caddy and Prestia were good. Yes. And the ball movement, it was just that quick, sharp movement coming out of the back line was really good. And we got those easy goals over the back, except for the one that Miles stuffed up. But I couldn't believe what I was watching with that. But the only thing we had to kind of tidy up at three-quarter time, we were getting beaten pretty badly in the clearances. So we did get back on top of it in the last. But yeah, it was definitely a good win from a mental perspective. And I think being a younger side, they don't have those mental demons like maybe some of the older players do.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think mentally, though, the difference in 12 months ago with our squad, obviously we had a better start to this year. It gives you the confidence, but it's just the younger guys, especially ones that have come in this year. Butler, obviously Urioli played last year, but I think he's gone to another levels mid-year. Yeah, he had a bit of a dip in form. But to me, it's the confidence of these younger guys that are really pushing more experienced guys, and it's taken us to another level. So
watching it in the first quarter, I could just, as a neutral, I could just tell that you guys were on, your pressure, everything that you guys were saying. It was, if any team could have worked back into the game, it was Hawthorn, but I just couldn't have seen it.
Yep.
And obviously they didn't. And yeah, you guys are you're playing as a cohesive unit. I mean, if you had said at the start of the year you'll be missing Jack Riewoldt for a game against Hawthorn, how do you think you go? You'd never think you'd win it.
No,
definitely not.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not.
And the Cats versus the Swans game, we'll touch on that quickly as well. So Sydney 16-11, 107 defeated Geelong 8-13, 61. So they got up by 46 points, which knocked you guys down to fourth after we won. What did you make of the game, Riessy? It was a really weird one. I thought, I tipped you guys. I thought you were going to do pretty well against them down there, but it just seems to kind of fall apart pretty quickly in the early stages.
They're tougher, harder, and a lot more committed, and they play at a level that I reckon we hope to get to. They're just, every time I watch them, I hate them so much, but it's because they're so good. And I've written down a few things here, and just have a listen to this. Listen, we won, Geelong won the following stats. We had more disposals. We had more inside 50s. We had more contested possessions. We had more uncontested possessions. We had more marks. We had more inside 50 marks. We had more stoppage clearances and more hit-outs. They had one more tackle, one more centre clearance, 2 more contested marks, and 8 more intercept possessions. They had 6 more scorers shots and won by 46 points.
They were just so super efficient.
Every time they got the ball, they were just so effective with it, and you could see we didn't want to give them the ball, and we let them pressure us all the way back up our own ground just to try and not let them have the ball, because it was like the players knew if they got the ball, they're going to kick a goal. And it was. While I never liked to write us off, it was pretty ominous. Early, we did well to work our way back into it, but then the capitulation at the start of the last quarter was not good.
And I think you did have a few chances. I mean, Menegola missed some absolute sitters that could have got you back into the game a little bit, but I don't think it would have maybe ultimately mattered in the long run because Sydney, they were just on.
Yeah, I don't think we would have. I think we could have, or at best, we could have gotten closer. I don't think we would have been able to beat them. I mean, the bloke I mentioned before, Tom Papley, he's in probably their bottom 6, and like some of the bottom 6 players we have combined for about 20 games, and Zach Guthrie looks like he's 12, and Sam Simpson looks the same, and yeah. But you can't make excuses for things like that. It's good for the youngsters to get beaten up a bit, because then they learn that that's where they need to get to.
Was it as a neutral? Is it a mental thing? A player like a Dangerfield, who's obviously one of the best players in the comp, he's out, and he's out from an early stage. Is it a mental thing?
I think it's got to be to an extent. Mitch Duncan's obviously having a brilliant year, but there's been a lot over the last year or two who haven't stepped up since he's got there. It was almost like they felt like he can do it, and I can get a bit of an armchair ride here. Like Menegola played really well, Duncan played well, Scott Selwood played really well, but they're still not at the level of the likes of your Luke Parkers and your Hannabrys, and it's just when a player is as damaging as what Dangerfield is for us, it's just so hard to replace. Like, as much as he gets players involved and everything, you saw against Hawthorn on 1 foot, he kicks 5 goals. And there's not even bloody Hawkins kicks 5 goals right now, so unless it's against Carlton.
I'll push on to probably the main topic to discuss, and that's the MRP decisions. I know we touched on it in last week's episode, but from a Geelong supporter's perspective, Riessy, what was your thoughts on the Dangerfield suspension from the tackle against Cruiser?
I knew he was gone because Cruiser was knocked out, and I think that's a bit of the problem. Like, they seem to be punishing players for the result and not the action, when I don't think that's what the MRP is there for. I mean, as a mate of mine said, he goes, what if someone cops a wicked falcon to the face and gets knocked out? Is the bloke who kicked it going to get rubbed out? It's going to get to a point where just because a guy's injured doesn't mean someone needs to be punished for it. If your head gets slammed on the Etihad turf, you're probably going to get knocked out, no matter if it was a dangerous tackle or you slip over. It's just it's a bit silly, and it was why Grundy was always going to be rubbed out too.
And even with the Grundy one on Ben Brandy, obviously got 2 weeks, I think it was. But in both of those tackles, I personally don't think that either of them slung that play to the ground, nor did they drive him into the ground. It was just a tackle, and unfortunately, sometimes people get a bit unlucky. Like, it's a contact sport at the end of the day. And I know I've mentioned this incident before, but when Jack Viney cleaned up Tom Lynch getting a hard ball get and broke his jaw, the MRP wanted to rub him out for a few weeks, and it just doesn't make sense. And someone actually posted on Facebook earlier like a tutorial from the AFL website on how to tackle, which has got a very young Joel Selwood and a very young Daniel Rich doing the demonstrations. And all of those demonstrations they did showed pinning the arms and taking the guy to ground to the side. And even in that video, the player who was tackled, his head ended up hitting the ground, albeit not as hard because they weren't running a million mile an hour. But then we get people in the media like Damien Barrett saying that we need to have a big look at tackling altogether and completely change the way the game's played from a tackling perspective next year. But it's easy to say that, but there's angles, there's momentum, it's a split-second reaction, and as long as they're not intending to sling someone to the ground or drive them into the ground, it's kind of just a bit of bad luck, I think, sometimes.
I don't understand. Like, I was never a good footballer, but the idea that the tackler has to protect the person's head. I mean, it's not like you're guiding them down to the ground to make love to them. You're tackling them to bloody get the ball and get a holding the ball decision, which is exactly what Grundy did. And if you got half the people saying, yeah, they're pro Collingwood, but if they're saying it's a perfect tackle, and then he gets rubbed out, was it 3-2?
Yes.
It's ridiculous that it can be holding the ball, but he's being suspended.
Yeah.
And while I don't think if just because an umpire says it's not a free kick that you shouldn't be suspended, but it's such a stupid idea that someone can get rubbed out just because the opposition player was knocked out. I mean, how many players are going to get knocked out for tackling Angus Brayshaw or Paddy McCartan? Like, these guys are. It's just silly, and I just think they're losing grip on the game, and they're trying to make it as safe as possible. But it's a contact game. It's a high-speed game. People are going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Look, there's pressure. There's obviously outside pressure from people who don't play the game that, concussions are going to affect people later down in life. And, yeah, fair enough. But as you said, Michaels, it's a contact game, and these things are going to happen. And at the end of the day, Grundy puts on a great tackle, and he does what he's basically been taught to do from probably the first day he's ever played footy. And if Ben Brown gets up from that tackle, we're not talking about this issue. We're saying, it's a free kick. To him, it's a perfect tackle.
That's exactly right, and that's why it's so stupid. And
Grundy plays this week, and that's where it's going wrong in my opinion. And where are we going to be in a few years? Is it going to be touch football where players are going to be too scared to actually lay a tackle?
And watching a few other games on the weekend, like after these incidents happened, where you kind of knew they were going to get rubbed out, that kind of tackle would happen 30 or 40 times a game, and the player's head would still hit the ground, but it just wouldn't get him in that sweet spot. And like you just said, that happens, get up and it's play on. But if it hits him in that wrong spot in the same kind of tackle, and the bloke's going to get 2 or 3 weeks for it, it's a bit ridiculous.
It is. And where do we stop? That tackle that basically has rubbed Joel Selwood out for the year. Yeah, okay, it was, again, another perfect tackle. But, yeah, okay, it's put Selwood out with an ankle injury. Where do we stop? Is that suspendable now? How stupid are we going to get with this rule?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is a concussion, 3 down to 2 from a perfect tackle, and Buddy's was, again, the same, a perfect tackle, and his leg went under him? Is that suspendable, going forward?
You look at Mumford. Mumford tried to take Max Gawn's head off, but because he didn't, it's the same. I think he got the same as Grundy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whereas one's actually trying to play football and one's trying to take a guy's head off. It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
No, and that's where it should always be intent. We'll push on to the other ones that are probably affecting Geelong a lot more now. Tom Hawkins gets 3 weeks down to 2 for his jumper punch. Riessy, your thoughts?
He's an idiot. How many more times does this guy need to be told not to do it? I think he got suspended last year for, I think it was Phil Davis. I think he did it too. It might have been last year. I'm not sure. But then to miss already and then to do it, it felt like he did it 3 times throughout the game. It's like, that's not tough anymore. You're going to have to assert yourself in a better way. And we've now lost him for quite possibly the most important game of the season. And, yeah, we've lost him and we've lost, if I can move forward, Duncan, for both just being stupid. As much as I roasted Tom Papley, Duncan is dumb for what he did. There was never going to be an outcome that worked out well for him or the club.
And I know reading the Geelong board, a lot of people are saying to appeal it, and part of me agrees that they should, just on the logic that it shouldn't have been given a suspension. But at the same time, I fear that if Geelong appeal it, at the end of the day, he still punched the bloke in the stomach, and there's a precedent set that equals a suspension. And you would hate for him to appeal it and cop 2 weeks. So it'd be interesting to see what the club does about that one.
Yeah, thanks for that, Trent Cotchin.
I was going to say that obviously we've been very lucky. We've been very lucky this year at the MRP with Cotchin twice, with his jumper punch on Lockie Neal and the one on the St Kilda player as well. But same with Dusty. I mean, he copped the fine for the I guess
against the Lions,
on the chin against the Lions. Can't remember the little defender that
Nick Robinson.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, he got under his skin, and he played it well. He was towing the line a bit there, but look, we've been very lucky. And I think that's where the frustration is that, 1 week it's not looked at, and the next week you got players like Merritt and Duncan and Hawkins that are sitting out for a week, when really a month ago Cotchin should have been sitting out for a week.
I think going forward, I wouldn't mind seeing like the jumper punches and the punches to the stomach. They're so soft, and it is just a bit of argy-bargy. I wouldn't even mind seeing the punishment be an increasing fine each time that player does it. Even if it gets up to $40,000-$50,000, if they want to keep doing it, they're going to keep forking out cash. I just don't think that those kind of actions warrant missing games. I think suspension should be left for deliberate strikes to the head, or massive hip and shoulders off the ball when they're not looking. Things like that actually accrued intentional acts. That should be what suspensions are for.
It used to be fines with it was just wrestling. When the jumper punches got out of hand, it was fines for wrestling. And now a jumper punch is seen to be just as bad as someone. I'll go back to Mumford again because it's fresh in the mind. I feel like there's a lot of people, might be even more than a lot, that just it doesn't make sense anymore as to why players are getting rubbed out for things where it used to be that's footy.
Before the game yesterday, I think they had a footy flashback on, and you look at it and you go, I think it was a game from the early 90s, if I can remember correctly, and you look at it and the amount of, I guess, argy-bargy, some jumper punches thrown, and you just go, man, if the rules these days were in place back then, half the team would be missing the next week, just from the little jumper punches and the wrestling and little melees that went on. And I know it's different times and whatnot, but, again, like I said previously, where do you draw the line, and where do we move forward? Like, to me, this is all little soft stuff. Those little punches, they happen in the game. And, okay, yeah, there's outside pressure to get rid of this kind of stuff. But, again, where do you draw the line? And it's becoming ridiculous.
Yeah, and the sad thing is it's probably going to cost someone a spot in the grand final one day. Mm-hmm. This is what it's going to come down to. We'll push on to the preview of this week's big game. So 3rd versus 4th on the ladder, and the winner would just about secure a top 4 spot and still be in the hunt to finish as high as 2nd. And as a lot of us Richmond supporters will know, we haven't beaten Geelong since round 9 in 2006. So a very long time between drinks, and if there was any time that we could probably knock them off, given these recent outs, then now would be the time. So hopefully the boys come with a switched-on mentality. Kraz, I'll get your thoughts first. How do you think we can go about winning this game?
Well, obviously, it's all about the outs. Obviously, Dangerfield comes in for Selwood, but again, like I mentioned before, our defence is, I believe it's the best defence in the league. And with Hawkins missing, obviously it's just going to be Harry Taylor up forward. Is that right, Riessy?
Well, I would think so. It might have to be the Harry Taylor show.
Yeah, so he, I don't want to mention it, but he tore us up with his late switch in the last quarter last year, and we dropped a very winnable game. We're up by 5 goals, I think it was, going into that last quarter, and we should have won last year. And Harry Taylor was the difference. Obviously, different mindset and bit of a different team this year, but I think with Hawkins out, I think obviously where it's going to be won for us, we're going to keep them to a low score, in my opinion. And it's just whether our small forwards, and obviously Jack comes back in this week. We've just got to really, at the end of the day, I know it sounds stupid, but if we can get a few goals in early, especially what happened to Geelong last week, we're going to lock them down, and then I don't feel like they're going to kick a big score with our defence. But it's mental. If we can go off the back of yesterday against Hawthorn, if we can come out strong, get on top early, it's going to make the difference. And with Selwood out and a few big names out, the mentality for them, hopefully, we're a bit stronger to start off with. I think that's where we're going to win it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And one thing we can always be confident of is our backline will do a pretty good job. No matter how many inside 50s other teams get, we seem to have a pretty good ability to restrict scoring. So it will heavily come down to that. But yeah, it's going to be a massive midfield battle as well. I know they're missing some key players, but they've still got. I mean, Guthrie's still a gun. I mean, I love watching him play. So he's one we have to keep an eye out for as well. But Riessy, what do the Cats have to do to get over the line?
A lot different to Friday night. That's one thing. I think it's going to have to be almost what we saw when we went up to spotless. It's just going to have to be one of those efforts where you sit back and go, geez, our future looks really bright here with kids absolutely doing things that you didn't think they were capable of. The likes of Menegola are going to have to put in massive performances. So is Scott Selwood again. We'll need Zach Smith to ruck and absolutely destroy Soldo and Nankervis. I can only assume they're going to bring Stanley in for Hawkins. So it'd be nice if he played his good game for the year this week. But I'm never not confident because of the era that we've been through, but it's one of those ones where we'll need the likes of Parsons to kick three. We'll need some of the other younger players to bow up with a couple. We'll need Tui to play out of his skin. It'll all have to go right for us, and we'll need you guys to be the team that you've been to us for the last decade for us to stand a chance. We need you guys to get stuck inside your heads.
Yeah, and to be honest, there's every chance that could happen. I think that you guys are going to come out really strong to prove a point, given the whole MRP stuff and losing last week to Sydney. So it's not going to be a walk in the park by any stretch. You mentioned Scott Selwood before. I'm tipping he's the obvious matchup for Dusty.
Yeah, I would think he goes there. I don't think I'm alone as a Geelong fan in saying that. I hope he niggles him to the point where Dusty just gives him a real soft jumper punch that rules him out for probably 7 weeks. But yeah, I would think Scooter's got to go to Dusty, and if that doesn't work, he'll have to go to Cochin because we'll have to do something about him. It'd be nice to see Danger versus Dusty in a 1-on-1, but I don't think we can afford to take that risk with the outs that we've got.
And Craz, you mentioned before about Harry Taylor being the difference last year. Assuming he plays up forward, who is David Asprey the right matchup for him?
Well, Asprey's been taking all season long. He's been taking the main defender, and in my opinion, doing an amazing job. Like I said before, to me, he's our most improved. And he'll take the key forward, whoever it is, and I think it will be Harry Taylor. Rance will obviously will float around and be third man up. But yeah, I think Asprey gets Harry Taylor. It's been working. Why change it?
Yeah, fair call. And at the other end of the ground for your defence, Riessy, Lockie Henderson, he's had a decent year, but I'm just not sure who he's going to line up on, to be honest, this week, because on the assumption that Rewalt comes back in, Tom Lonergan will probably go to him because he's done a pretty good job on him in previous years, I must say, which leaves a whole heap of small forwards for Lockie Henderson to look after.
Well, it'll be interesting. They're either going to, back Lonergan in against Jack and used Henderson to try and sweep around because I really like Henderson. I really like the acquisition of him. I think he's been brilliant. I don't think he gets anywhere near the plaudits that he deserves playing our back six. But I wouldn't be surprised if they rested Lonergan and had Henderson play on Jack. But I can see him trying to take on a resting Nankervis or Soldo in the forward line, and then if all's not going well, they'll swing him forward because he can pitch hit there as he's tried to a couple of times, but nowhere near as effective as Big Harry.
And the last player, we obviously mentioned him earlier, but Patrick Dangerfield on his return game. I personally think he's going to run right. He's going to come out all guns blazing. What do we have to do to try and curb his influence, Craz?
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you tag him? I mean, there hasn't been many people that can. But is it a Vloston? Is it a Kane Lambert that goes to him? I think we may put a tag on him, but I don't know. I feel like we'll be confident to not always go with him. Obviously, there'll always be someone near I don't think there'll be a hard tag where it takes one of our players out of the game. I think with Selwood out, I think that frees us up a little bit more. Obviously, they bring someone in and they're going to be quality, but I don't think a hard tag will be on him. Maybe a Miles if he retains his place. But look, I would like to see Lambert. Lambert's done well. I think he's previously, during a mid-match, been put on a player that's been playing well and done a good job. So I would say I'd like to see, if we do a hard tail, I'd like to see Kane Lambert. He's got the tank and probably the speed to go with him.
Yeah, fair enough. And from a Richmond perspective, with Riewoldt being the inclusion, who do we reckon comes out? Unfortunately, I think Miles might make way.
Yep.
But I don't mind him in the team, but yeah, I'm just not sure who else we could. I don't want to kick Soldo out. I actually think he's doing a good job.
Yes.
His tap work's quite good. Yeah, he might not be super effective around the ground with marking and kicking and all that, but he's creating a contest, and more importantly, he's giving Nankervis the chop out he needs, so we don't drive him into the ground. So we actually get more out of him over the space of 4 quarters than what we have previously. So I think it might be someone like Miles that may make way for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You've got to put Jack in if he's raring to go. You've got to put him in. In saying that, we haven't missed him. I know our opposition hasn't been as strong in the last few weeks that he's missed. But yeah, look, I think Miles probably makes way. I can't see us changing up the forward line drastically with a small forward like a Butler. Even though, look, Butler's been a bit quiet the last month. Another person's that may make way is Corey Ellis. I wouldn't like to see it after a pretty solid game yesterday. But look, I think Miles probably comes out for Jack. And again, it's lucky Selwood goes out, so we have the luxury to drop like an inside mid.
And Riessy from
you've got to keep. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say I would love it if you dropped Soldo, because it would have been. I feel like it would have advantaged Smith entirely if Nankervis had to go 4 quarters against him.
Yeah, well, we've seen in the middle of the year when it was just Nankervis going solo in the ruck. He tires quick, and I mean that's what ruckmen do these days. They tire quick because they're asked to do so much other than ruck. And his body halfway through the year, I had fears that it was going to be the same as Marich. I mean, he went unassisted in the ruck for so long, and you look at him now, his body's pretty run down. And I had the same fears for Nankervis, but Soldo coming in has just given him that extra room to breathe, really, and freshen up and go down forward and rest. And yeah, like you said, Michael, he's not setting the world on fire. And what was it? It's like his 5th or 6th game for us. You can't ask for a ruckman to come in and absolutely star from day dot. And he picked up footy late as well. Everyone's got to remember that. So yeah, I'd like to see Soldo stay, because especially with 2 athletic ruckmen for Geelong, he can't go unassisted in such a crucial game.
Absolutely. And for Geelong, Riessy, it's just going to be as simple as Dangerfield in, Selwood out, and then Stanley comes in, I'm assuming, for Hawkins. And who would make way, or who would come in for Duncan, assuming that there's no appeal?
Well, I've read so many mixed reports on whether or not Motlop's good to go. So I think if he is, you have to, no matter how poor of a season Motlop's had. It's just we can't probably play a first gamer or one of the youngsters, but Chris Scott's done it before, and I feel like I'm sometimes alone in this. I'm one of the very few who really, really rate Chris Scott and thinks he's excellent. I mean, he played debutants up at Spotless, and we came away with a draw, unlucky not to win. So I'm sure he'll be thinking it through, and he'll have something, and hopefully it proves to be a tactical masterstroke that everyone will say was a fluke. But, yeah.
And before we finish up, we'll just get a prediction from everyone on the game. So, Kraz, we'll start with you. What's your prediction and margin?
Yep. Look, I feel like it will be close. We've got the mentality, I think, after the last few weeks with Jack not featuring and us winning comfortably those last 2 games. And I think with the outs, we have to win for a mental perspective. I feel like it's going to be close all game. Geelong are hard to beat down there, and like you mentioned before, we have not beaten them since 2006. He said. So the mental edge goes to Geelong there, but I feel like our form and our belief that we can now match it with these big guys, and the exclusions from them again will give us a bit of an edge as well. So I give us very close for 3 quarters, and I feel like we may pip him in the end by 2 to 3 goals.
Fair enough. And what about yourself, Riessy?
I'm expecting the Wiley Buzzer show. He'll just make Rance look pathetic. No, I hope we can make it a really close game. I feel like almost the exact same as Craz in the sense, I think if it's close at 3/4 time, I think we can run over the top with the benefit of what do the media call it, the noise of affirmation. Hopefully Skilled Stadium is absolutely rocking with if you believe the media, 3 Richmond fans that are allowed to come because we don't let them come.
Oh, I have a joke on that shortly.
But yeah, I still think we're going to win. But I thought we beat Sydney. So.
And any kind of margin?
Oh, look, I reckon it could be a really close one again like last year. I'm thinking 5 points.
Fair enough. And I'd like to think we can get the job done similar to what we did to Hawthorn, but it's just, like you said, Chris, it's such a mental hurdle, maybe even more so for the supporters and the players. The players might not even care about the mental hurdle, to be honest, but I reckon we might get up by anywhere between 15 to 20 points. And as a side note, ironically, even if we do win, Joel Selwood would still have not lost to Richmond because he's missing the game in his entire career, so he still has a chance to keep his record intact.
I think that's Tom Hawkins as well.
Is it really? Wow, that's quite sad.
Because they were both 07 and they're both missing. So. And
just a reminder to the listeners, the game is on Saturday at 2:10 p.m. at Skilled Stadium, and we're on Foxtel Live from 2 p.m. And the VFL is actually also on at 10:15 at Skilled Stadium, so Geelong versus Richmond. So make sure you get down to check out the VFL guys as well. And just to the Richmond listeners out there, hopefully a few of you were lucky enough to find that golden ticket to be able to attend the Geelong game this year, given how rare it is to get in. And if you do, enjoy the trip down, and hopefully we can get a win for you. Kraz, Riessy, thank you so much for coming onto the show, guys. And until next time, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Ooh.